We have a very special guest tonight. I am very excited he's joining us, the one and only, the Taskmaster himself, Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's great to be on your show finally.
Oh, I don't know where to start. I mean, unless you have like 9 days set aside for this show, I don't think we're going to scratch the surface of everything you've done in wrestling, Kevin.
Well, we can try.
Let's talk about being a booker. I've always been fascinated by being a booker. I think like a trait of being a booker, like yourself, or like I've spent time with Jim Cornette. You have a knack to make everything you say sound interesting. Like I think that's a big trait of a booker. What do you think? What makes for a good booker from Kevin Sullivan's point of view?
I think one of the things that make a good booker is staying up with current affairs. Don't fall into the past. Stay up to current affairs. And, I think that you mentioned Jimmy Cornette. Jimmy's a friend of mine, and I think the world of Jimmy. And Jimmy has this way of looking at talent and knowing how to place them. I think that's one of those things that people learn from other guys that are bookers or agents or whatever you want to call them. And they pick up on it, where some of the guys really aren't interested in picking it up. You got to have an interest in it. And I mean, they're the guys that I was lucky. I came from I'm not that smart, but I can remember stuff. So I was around a lot of smart guys, from Eddie Graham to J.J. Dillon to Dusty Rhodes to Bill Watts to Vince Sr., a guy you probably never heard about, and Roddy Piper. And I think he's one of the top two smartest guys of all times. Roddy and I used to talk, when God bless Roddy, when he was alive, was Leo Garibaldi. You ever hear the name?
I have.
Yeah, he was a huge star in the 50s. He was 16 years old. He was a matinee idol, got injured, and he was actually hired by the NWA at one time to go around and be like a special referee and report on the territories. And he was super, super smart. And Roddy used to say, nobody knows him, and he's one of the smartest guys in the business because he stopped early, stopped wrestling early, and stopped being in the office early. But, so I think that guys like Jimmy were attracted to guys like, we'll say, Leo Garibaldi or Terry Funk or Bill Watts.
Got it. Now, let me ask you this. How do you book for an entire company? Someone's got to win. Someone's got to lose. Like, what's your mindset when you go in there and you're telling someone, a hothead, they're about to lose the world title? Like, how do you handle 30, 40, 50 guys?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. Jim Barnett one time gave me the best compliment of all times, I think. He said to me, Kevin, you mind if I come in and watch how you give finishes? So I said, no, I love Jim. And when guys come in, like you said, you got two guys coming in. One of them's going to love you at the end of the conversation. One's going to hate you. So I used to say to them, we'll say Crowbar to you. Crowbar, I'd like you to do Pat a favor. Puts me out of it, right out of the middle. Now it's between you two, right? So if I alleviate, and I try to show a favor, it got to be repaid, you know what I mean? And I think I learned to book by Eddie, but I also, Vincina, one time, I'll make the story short. You know where they did the original Rocky in Philly, the arena?
Yeah.
We used to do TV there. And if Vince's and his cronies left, I got up, I looked at his book, and he had a year booked. And it was fascinating. And that's before guys were in contracts, guys were in and out, right? He had the main event booked. It was how many times? You looked at the big shows, right? New York, Philly, Pittsburgh, Providence, Boston. You look at the big shows, it was Bruno's going to wrestle Stan Hansen 3 times, but he's only going to wrestle Brody twice and Bull Ramos once. And then the tag match he had booked right under it. And then he had the guy that was working his way up to Bruno on the third from the top. Then he have, maybe a guy flying in from LA or a guy that wants to be exposed. And then like on the second or third match, where, he was using local guys, he'd have a heel that was squashing guys. So he caught me reading this book and he said, you want to learn? I said, yeah. He said, this. So I started asking questions. And this is what I found fascinating. He said, yeah, you got to stay ahead of the game or you could stop playing catch up. He said, most of this is going to be the same at the end of the year, but, it should pan out the way it should. He said, so I asked him, I said, why do you put a guy on the third match in the Garden where you're flying him in a heel and giving him a squash match for a minute or 2 minutes? He said, because you see the third match from the top where I have that heel getting ready for Bruno? What if he doesn't like a payoff? What if he gets hurt? What if he just flakes off? I got this guy that's been squashing everybody. I can slip him into that position. So, to me, to have a year booked, he didn't have the TVs that they have now. It wasn't a TV show back then, even 80. It was the TV drove the house shows, but it was a house show driven business. But I believe you have to, to me, it's like writing a book or writing a movie. You got to know the end of the story. And if you're trying to catch up week by week, you get behind the 8 ball and you start to panic. And I think that's what we saw now that you see WWF's getting tighter, the show's getting tighter. I think you see that because back when it was all scripted and they were starting stories and dropping them completely, you know what I mean? And oh, well, we'll restart something. No, if you don't if something doesn't work the first week, give it a few weeks. It may turn the corner, but if it doesn't, you better find yourself a way to get out of that angle and get something out of it, not just drop it because you're vested time and TV time, which is very expensive.
Wow, that's awesome. Let me ask you this: you're a big baseball fan, as you know. Nobody bats 1,000, including bookers.
Right.
Give me an idea. Give me something that you booked, and when it happened, you said, "Man, I wish I did have a do-over for that one." You wish you could take it back. What was something you wish you didn't book? Anything come to mind? There's got to be something.
Well, I did make a huge mistake, but I rectified it. Goldberg, I beat him the first time ever on TV. People don't remember. He had red tights, red boots, Falcon jacket. He had bald head, but had hair. And Steve McMichaels beat him on a count out.
Oh, so you're not talking about you beat him with Kevin Nash later in his run. You're talking right off the bat.
Right up the first time ever on TV.
Wow.
Wow, I made a mistake here. So I pulled him off of TV, made him Mike Tyson, the black boots, no socks. Yeah, but, it's like you said, nobody bats 1,000. And you can come up with a great idea, but it's a talent-driven business. If the talent can get it over, you got a good chance looking smart because, as you know, Mike, it's a charisma business. You either most guys either have or don't. Most guys, when they get to like you did in the major leagues, there isn't much that separates us except that thing that you can't put your finger on, like the Rock, right? Do you remember when they were booing him out of the building?
Yeah.
Did anybody think what we see today was going to be that?
No.
So, I mean, it was him believing in himself or taking the chance. You know, in Austin, the same way. I mean, guys that have drawn Dusty Rhodes. Here's something. I wrestled Dusty in a single, a tag, a man, me being on the floor, him wrestling Mark, or something. Almost every night for 3 years. Never once did I ever hear a fan yell out Dusty or Fat. He just had that special quality. So, yeah, I think it's that you can write the greatest story in the world, but if you don't have the guys to present it right, it's not going to be get over like it should. But on the other hand, if the guys are very, very good, you can write a mediocre story and then pick it up and make it better.